I would like to welcome everyone on board for this closing ceremony or a get-together kind of a sharing of experiences of us conducting uh, the research competition, which was due to some unforeseen delays from the department. We're sorry we were not able to communicate with you further, but definitely this threshold is very close to our heart, and we definitely like to see you in person, but we thought online we say we can go on with the online. Last 2 years, we've been seeing a lot of changes in our lives. We've experienced the pandemic, and it's like history in making. And we thought the theme of this year's threshold was about offline to online, the shift, whether it's in the field of work, education, all the sectors were affected in a drastic manner. And we thought we could give insight. We, as students, can research, look into the problems, and we were happy that in spite of all the difficulties we faced at home, in the society, we did get a good number of papers for threshold. We had 11 participants, and we were really happy to see the various topics that were touched upon. Of course, since this is a preliminary attempt by many, there were some, as research always goes, there were some drawbacks or whatever, but I'm sure this was definitely a learning experience for all of us. And that's what will take us forward in understanding the social, political, economic, psychological issues, events, and understanding from a psychological perspective. I'll just give you a brief outline of what we would be doing today. We'll have the two best out of the 11 papers that came to us. We had judge who selected two best papers, and they will be presenting their work. And after that, we would be having a session by Dr. Wilbur Gonzalez. So this is the scheme of this program today. We have been talking about research in class, in theory. All of us have studied paper in research methodology at some point of time at your UG or PG level. Practicing research, putting those theories into actually doing a research, and threshold is one of the ways in which we can, have this transition from theory to practice. And therefore, 10 years back, we started this intercollegiate competition. And to know more about our department and college and threshold as a competition and the department's view of looking at this competition and other programs that the department hosts, I would like to invite our head of the department, Madhuri Vaidya, to talk about the department, and of course, formally welcoming all our guests, our dignitaries for the program, and students, of course. So over to you, Madhuri, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Amita, for giving me that job, which I always love to. And it's a warm welcome to all the dignitaries. Normally, we happen to say on the dais, off the dais, but we all are on the same platform nowadays because of the grace of this online scenario. And in a way, yes, let's take it positive.
Ma'am, you have gone on mute mode. Now I think I'm unmuted.
Okay. Thank you so much, Amita, for giving me a duty, which, it always gives me a pleasure to talk about the department, to welcome and make everyone familiar with the Department of Psychology at Srimati P. N. Doshi Women's College. As the responsibility of heading this department is concerned, it truly gives me a pleasure to welcome everyone in today's program. Yes, our speaker of the day, Dr. Wilbur Gonzalez, who is a professor at the Department of Psychology at the University of Mumbai, and who is no more a guest for us, for our department, because we keep interacting with Dr. Wilbur on different platforms in different capacities. But yes, to put it on record, Wilbur, warm welcome on behalf of the department and the college to you for this program, conducting a session wherein definitely it would be an insightful session for the students who are so much interested in the field of research. Welcome to Professor Sonali and Professor Harshana, whom I can see as the faculties from the respective colleges, that is KJ Somaiya and Guru Nanak. Welcome all, both of you, and thank you so much for motivating your students to participating in Trishul and yes, contributing to the success of Trishul in a concrete manner. I'm sure that today's session will help the participants as well as would-be participants for next research-oriented and research-related programs. I welcome all the participants. Yes, the winning teams, as well as all the students of psychology from Srimati P.N. Doshi, as well as the colleges like Guru Nanak, as well as Somaiya College, from which we had the participating teams for Trishul 2021. To talk about our department, yes, the one which is established in 1987. So more than 30 years back, the department has grown, I would say, horizontally as well as vertically. We have started the post-graduation course in psychology in the year 2004 with a specialization in industrial psychology. And I'm very happy and proud to say that since last 2 years, we have also started with one more specialization at MA degree, and that is a specialization in counseling psychology. Apart from this vertical growth, it is just a glimpse of the growth as such, but the department has expanded even horizontally in terms of getting into number of activities which would not only focus on students' growth in the academics, particularly in the field of psychology per se, but yes, to develop their personality holistically, to inculcate some aptitude. One of such is the research, and that too at an undergraduate level. And therefore, to be very frank, yes, we are very happy to see when even the participating teams have the students in their first year BA and second year BA. That itself shows that yes, they have an inclination, they just need some guidance, they just need some push from their teachers or from any expertise. And these students are truly eager to, get into the field of research. Trishul is one such activity which has been looked up to and awaited by not only the students at SNDT, a university affiliated colleges, but there are so many colleges across Mumbai city where the students, the staff particularly, keep asking us that next Trishul kab hai and next Trishul ki theme kya hai. So this itself, we take it as a feedback wherein it has been accepted, it has been appreciated by the staff, and I'm sure they do it. So just because they find that the Trishul is one such activity which gives a platform to the students to present whatever work that they do on their side, on their end. And it's the Trishul wherein not only they get a chance to present them, but they also get very important by judges on that particular region. So today you all have been one of the judges, rather he has judged your paper, and out of 11 participate, all those teams who actually showed interest and who not only did their work sincerely, but who have also showed readiness to modify try to learn some, have happened to talk to us that, ma'am, next schedule mein, we would definitely like to improve and we would definitely like to do a research on a still larger scale. Last time experience nahi tha, but now we are a little more experienced. So when we get to know such students who are ready to learn from their own experience, adding the comments by the expertise would definitely add more flavor into their interest in the research. And this is the occasion that I wish all the students to venture into the field of research as much as you can, because it is going to be a need of an hour in the field of psychology as well as across the fields. So with this, I welcome all of you once again, and I hand it over to Amita for further proceedings.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And as ma'am welcomed and introduced the panel, Dr. Wilbur as well. Dr. Wilbur has judged these papers and had given a detailed and a very nuanced understanding of what is required for each paper. What were the improvement areas of each research paper, a very detailed one. And after that, we sent these comments to the best papers that he thought could go in for publishing. They have made the changes according to what Dr. Wilbur had suggested, and has then given the papers back to us, which will be moving forward for publication. The two papers that were selected were Turning Off Camera, Coping, very interesting title actually, Coping Strategy in Video Conferencing. This paper was from KJ Somaiya and the young researchers Chaitali and Ritakshi. A hearty congratulations for having been selected as the best paper amongst the other papers. And we had another paper from Guru Nanak College, teacher's perspective towards online teaching. And this is very close to my heart because we've been experiencing this, and we would really like, we look forward to know what were your findings of the perspective of teachers on online teaching. Really interesting topics we had. Others had also research on interesting topics, but these were the selected ones. And the ones who did research on teachers' perspective were Yogita and Gargi from Guru Nanak College. So these congratulations to Yogita and Gargi, and we have invited them today to present their work, their research findings, and enhance our understanding of what they did and how did they go about the research. So I would request the team from KJ Somaiya, Chaitali and Ritakshi to take over and start with your presentation, and wish you all the best. Yes, Yogita, are you ready? Can you share the screen?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. So, ma'am, it's Chaitali from KJ Somaiya College of Arts and Commerce. Ma'am,
we can't see the screen yet, so
We can't see the screen.
Have you all started sharing screen, Chaitali?
no, actually, my teammate, she I think got some connectivity problem and
Okay.
she's not.
Okay, so will you all be sharing screen, or will you all be talking without sharing screen? What have you all decided?
You did, right? Chaitali, you could share the screen, right? Earlier?
I mean, from the laptop, it's like, give me like 2 minutes.
Ankita, if you can share your screen and share. Okay. Ankita.
Ma'am, I need like someone to let me in.
Madhuri ma'am, if you could let the participants in. Chaitali, is there a problem at your end? You can't share what is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am,
Having
can you make me the host again? I had some network issues, so I got disconnected.
Okay. Ashmat, could you do the needful?
You can
please?
share the screen. Just try once.
Yes. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes,
Maybe
You can
start.
Yes, please.
So, good morning to all the esteemed dignitaries, Vice Principal Ma'am, teachers, and fellow students. I, Chaitali Thakkar, and my teammate Ritakshi Gaglani from KJ Somaiya College of Arts and Commerce are pleased to present you our paper on turning off camera as a coping strategy in video conferencing. In 2020, the whole world went into a lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and every activity involving social contact went from offline to online. With this transformation came several challenges. Our paper is based on one such challenge, a concept popularly known as Zoom fatigue. So Zoom fatigue refers to the fatigue experienced due to participating in video conference calls. In a Stanford University study, this tiredness caused by video conferencing was attributed to four things: extraordinary amount of eye gaze at a close distance, constant viewing of self-video, and increased cognitive load.
There is ample evidence on how eye contact improves connection, faster responses, increased memorization of faces, and increased likability and attractiveness. So, while adapting to a new form of teaching, instructors familiar with face-to-face teaching are keen for students to turn on their cameras. On video, one must look at the camera to appear like they are making eye contact with an observer. However, during conferences with 3 or more people, it can be quite impossible to maintain mutual gaze between any two people.
Furthermore, students from different backgrounds may be unequally affected by stress from the pandemic. Some studies previously have also suggested that in comparison to voice calls, video conferencing increased cognitive load. The purpose of conducting this research is to see whether this fatigue can be decreased by simply turning off our cameras in the meetings. This is a step in enhancing our experience in the direction of online learning.
We were expected to master a wide variety of virtual meeting platforms in a very short time. Interactive instruction by turning on the camera can be believed to facilitate learning to counter the effects of social distancing policies. But these desires to teach interactively will mean excluding students who might not have access to good technology or home environment. The COVID-19 pandemic has already increased college student anxiety and depression, and a mandate for camera use may add to that trauma by increasing fatigue. In this study, one of the probable ways to cope turning off camera during online lectures to help cope with Zoom fatigue.
Now we move to methodology. In our research, there were 68 participants selected through the method of random sampling. The participants were college students who undertook online lectures due to the outbreak of COVID-19. The age range of participants is from 18 to 25, and 72.2% of participants were females and 27.8% were males. The participants were briefed about the study, and all the participants provided informed consent. They were then asked to fill a questionnaire through the medium of online form. There were a total of 15 questions. The survey required them to rate the questions on a 5-point scale, answer multiple choice questions, as well as provide subjective answers, examining factors that could cause or reduce fatigue and how turning the camera on or off would play a role. Using the secondary method, qualitative data were collected by searching electronic databases. A content analysis was conducted on the gathered data.
As you can see in these figures, our findings suggest that students who were currently attending or have attended online lectures preferred offline lectures over online, as it is visible in the figure 1. They preferred that however, the current situation, they had to attend lectures online. They preferred their cameras to be off, but since some teachers mandated to turn on the cameras, the subject requires the camera to be on. Students face several challenges. Although, as we can see, it was found that 57.4% had to rarely switch on camera. 88.2% of students prefer their cameras to be off.
On an average, participants spent 4.3 hours attending lectures while keeping the camera on for nearly an hour per day. The participants got 1 to 2 breaks varying from 5 minutes to 2 hours per day. On an average, a student gets 2 breaks of a duration of 16 minutes per day. Students were self-conscious about their appearance. They found it difficult to recognize non-verbal cues such as body language and posture. Like we can see from this figure, from the survey responses that we got, they also felt confused about cue recognition and like where to look and when to respond to the teacher. And they were very uncomfortable seeing their classmates in such close proximity on screen, and also rated their discomfort on a scale of 1 to 5.
Since people were attending, they were concerned about the environment's appropriateness and surrounding disturbance. Not everyone had access to private spaces. When seeing many people on screen, participants reported getting distracted. You can see the low concentration bar. That participants were getting distracted because of different backgrounds, noises, and gestures on the screen. Low concentration, anxiousness, environmental disturbance, and being mentally tired are the potential factors contributing to fatigue caused by video conferencing. As figure 10 and 11 shows, 94% of the participants felt that turning off the camera alone would make them feel more relaxed, with 76.5% of participants telling us that they would feel it would help them pay more attention and focus on what they need to.
Students also reported feeling anxious about having to be aware all the time, making my family not come in the area, and looking at myself. Having to continually look at the camera when cameras are on, and the fact that cameras restrict movement to a certain extent also affects people physically, like eye strains, neck aches, back aches, etc. There are always technical issues like internet connectivity, and then there are other difficulties they face due to online lectures, like loss of mobile data, phone lagging, phone overheating, and so on.
For the ease of online learning, participants recommended the following: to have flexible timings, technological training to be provided both to the teachers and students, the lectures and course material to be adjusted for the ease of online learning, Keeping your browser windows closed to reduce the temptation to multitask, to reduce the stimuli on the screen, to switch to phone or email when video conferencing is not necessary, taking shorter breaks, and hiding self-view and keeping yourself distant from the screen. Some other alternatives were that the availability of recordings should be taken into consideration. Using the chat feature, even in video conferencing, may help in better interaction and cooperation between teachers and students.
This study revealed insights into why students chose not to turn on their camera. Inadequate efforts to recognize and address college students' mental health challenges, especially during a pandemic, could have long-term consequences on their health and education. We can tailor online learning by developing alternatives to turning on cameras so students can cope with video conferencing and the COVID-19 pandemic better.
Thank you everyone for giving, we are grateful to our teachers, Mrs. Sonal Jambikar and Dr. Atish Taukari for guiding us throughout. We would also like to thank SPND College and our college, KJ Somaiya College of Arts and Commerce, for giving us this wonderful opportunity. This is our team, me and Chaitali. Feel free to ask any questions if anyone has any.
Anyone has questions, we can take the question and answer. Yes, anyone has? Interesting viewpoint that you've given, Vitakshi, and it's really Chaitali, Vitakshi and Chaitali is really interesting. And yes, we as teachers, we always feel, why do the students not switch on the camera? And yes, definitely these are some of the things that we need to look at from the students' perspective as well. Congratulations once again. Any questions? If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them. Unmute yourself, or you can put them in the chat box. I think the conclusions and your findings resonate amongst the students of why they do not switch on their cameras. Okay, yeah. So probably that's why they don't have any questions. Okay. Okay. How was your experience while you did the research, Chaitali and Vitakshi?
Ma'am, it was actually we learned a lot because at first we had no idea we were very scared, like it's a research and it involves so many aspects and all. We only read about it in textbooks and stuff, never actually done it. So it was a bit scary at first, but then our teachers also guided us and they told at least start doing it. And then once we started, it got a little bit easier, and then we could complete it. And then it was we submitted it, and then we were we don't know what we've done, but we tried our best. So it was really eye-opening for us.
I think that's the whole. Yes, go ahead, please. Sorry. Yeah.
Also, the constructive criticism was very, very good. To know where we went wrong and to then correct it is another experience. Then we grow from it. Most times we submit and we don't know that what's wrong. So that was very nice.
Right. Yeah, and we thank Wilbur for it because he's given such detailed comments on each of the paper. Yeah. And thank you, Wilbur, for it. Yes, that's the whole purpose of having. We don't call it as a competition, but it's more like a convention, like a learning step. Research always helps you grow, understand, and relate to the world around you. And I think that's the whole purpose of having this kind of a convention. This is the student perspective. Let's move on to the teacher's perception of online. I would invite the next team to start their presentation.
Okay. I will stop.
Yeah, please stop the presentation so that the other teams can. Thank you so much and congratulations once again.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Harshna ma'am, can you present a PPT?
Yes, Yogita, I'll do that.
Are you able to share your screen, Harshana ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Yogita, if you have it on your screen, actually, even you can share it. Anybody can share screen actually. So if you have it on your screen, it'll be okay for you to share it in case you want. Okay, we can see the screen.
We can see.
Harshana shared. Yeah.
You may start, Yogita.
Okay. Good morning to everybody present here. I'm Gargi Chaturvedi and I'm Yogita Karthik, and we're undergrad students from Guru Nanak College of Arts, Science and Commerce. And the research topic that we chose was teachers' perception towards online learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. So since we know that COVID-19 was declared as a global pandemic, which brought to light to a number of flaws and inequities in our education institutions, ranging from a lack of access to bandwidth and computers required for online learning, to lack of supportive surroundings required to focus on learning, to a mismatch of resources and needs. And on the flip side, we feel that online education has also resulted in increased time and space flexibility, easy and rapid sharing of study materials, quick feedback, and more freedom to connect with the faculty as well, which also, on the other hand, which also helped us to reduce the transportation and financial costs, and also improve teachers and students' technological skills and increase the convenience and comfort of the learners. So as we know, prior to pandemic, the online resources were regarded as supplemental resources in India. And whereas in-person classes were regarded as primary resources for teaching and learning. So we felt that this situational demand has tested the readiness of academic institutions, which rose to several obstacles during the adoption of this new delivery mode, and which include lack of internet and smartphone connectivity in rural areas, as well as a lack of experiences and understanding among the faculty in conducting the online classes. Also, the insufficient technological assistance and a lack of engagement among the students and the teachers, and challenges for students with special educational needs and more extended screen time. So as a result, we wanted to focus on general perceptions of teachers about the online classes in comparison to face-to-face classes, in order to understand the benefits, the limitations, and the obstacles that arose during this period. And we felt that it is critical to understand the viewpoint of teachers, because if they are dissatisfied as the educators and deem the online mode to be unsatisfactory, then we feel that the education foundation would be weakened. So ma'am, could you please change the slide? To understand the teacher's perception, we analyzed 4 main domains, namely support, access to resources, motivation, and challenges. And we would elaborate our findings at length further as we go ahead. Ma'am, could you change the slide? So as Gargi mentioned, we had analyzed 4 main domains. And based on the 4 main domains, we formulated 4 research questions. Being, did the teachers receive adequate support and technical assistance when they needed it? Did they have sufficient access to online learning resources to plan, research, and prepare lessons? And has the transformation impacted the motivation levels of the teachers, and what were the challenges that the teachers had faced during the lectures? Ma'am, could you please go to the next slide? So for the same, we used the research. So we used qualitative survey approach as our research method, and we collected the data. And to analyze the data, we used descriptive research methods. And ma'am, could you go to the next slide? And to collect the data, we circulated a Google form, and the questions focused on the 4 main domains, which was accessibility of resources, the support received, and challenges, and the teacher's motivation. And the participants for our survey were 109 teachers from Mumbai University. and they were teaching different subjects, as you can see in the table that shows the demographic data of the teachers. We used a purposive sampling method, and as you can see, the teachers ranged from teaching school students, higher secondary students, degree students, and the subjects that they taught were humanities, math, science, economics and commerce, languages, PE, arts, dance, and music. So for the key findings, now we present the key findings of the 4 main domains. Ma'am, the next slide. So the 4 main domains that we analyzed. So I'll elaborate on the findings on each domain. First being the satisfaction with the support received by the teachers. So with the data collected, we got to know that majority of teachers seem to be satisfied with the technical assistance that they received whenever needed. And more than 50% of the teachers were also satisfied with the amount of time they were given to learn and incorporate the e-learning into their teaching methods. However, only 6% of the teachers, as you can see in the table, only 6% of the teachers seem to be satisfied with the assistance available, which points us the drawback and scope for improvement. And we can say that despite this, overall, we find that the lecturers were satisfied with the support received to assist them in their use of e-learning. And ma'am, could you please go over the next slide? So the second domain that we focused was access to e-learning resources. And with the data collected, we got to know that more than 60% of the teachers were either completely or moderately satisfied with the number of resources that they received, and they were able to access them and deliver their lectures. However, only 10% of respondents indicated dissatisfaction in terms of not having sufficient resources to use them in online classes whenever they wished, and also to monitor learners' progress. Ma'am, yeah. The next domain that we would look at is teachers' motivation, and as you can see, the table points the fact that more than 90% of the teachers feel motivated when the students are participating, and more than 50% of the teachers disagreed that their workload has been impacted with and more than 50% disagreed that their workload has been increased, and they agree that the increase in the motivation level did get affected when adequate practice and support was provided. So this shows an overall positive attitude of the teachers towards e-learning, online learning. Ma'am, could you please change the slide? The last domain that we looked at was challenges to e-learning, and we can see that the main challenges and obstacles that the teachers faced was introduction of online classes in respect to technical difficulties, internet connection, student participation, and the overall impact on the teachers, teaching experience of the teachers. 37% of the lecturers disagreed, and almost 22% are neutral to online learning being time consuming to learn and difficult to use. So this indicated a fairly distributed view of the challenges that the teachers faced, with an inclination towards the disagreement. And the same can be said about their work-life balance as well, work-life balance disruption as well. According to 23% of the teachers, increase in difficulty in conducting lectures for application-based subject impacted the smooth delivery of the lectures. And to conclude, we all know that the education system was impacted all over the world, and online method of teaching was definitely a temporary solution, and it proved to be beneficial as well as had a few challenges. And with the past research, we can say that the viewpoint of the teachers are more or less in support of online learning, and although they do face a few challenges when it comes to internet issues and student participation, etc. And while determining the general perception, we could say that overall face-to-face classes were preferred by teachers, and
to maybe look at how online learning could be improved, we can work on infrastructure and improved internet access, and the shift and this would in turn shift the attitudes of the students and the teachers. And yeah, maybe further research could be undertaken on a comparative analysis of the student's perspective with the teacher's perspective. And we would just like to thank our professors for constant guidance and support that they gave during the conduction of the research. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience if you have for the team? Okay, yeah. Gargi and Ankita, if you could share your experiences of conducting this research, if you can just in a few sum up, that's the.
Amita ma'am,
yeah?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Hi, Gargi and Yogita, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Gargi and Yogita. I just wanted to ask you that in the methodology section, if I'm not wrong, you said that this is a qualitative data, right? But from what you've shown us, it just it looks like it is the data points are quantitative. The form in which you collected the data looks like a survey questionnaire with agree, disagree, etc., etc. And the analysis that you presented is also fairly numerical. So then why would you say that this is a qualitatively collected data? What is qualitative in terms of your analysis or approach? Or could you help us understand that?
I think the 4 domains that we saw was by an extensive literature review. And when we tried to ask them questions on the 4 domains, we didn't use a standardized. Yeah, we didn't use a standardized test. And they also, the answers that we got were presented in a numerical form, but we didn't use any inferential statistics to quantify it and give you a mean response or like an average perception of the teachers, but we just gave it to you in percentage format, which is why we also said that it was a descriptive analysis of the data that was collected.
All right. And another thing that I want to ask you is that you've had 4 research questions, right? And when you presented us the overall findings on those 4 research questions, as you said, the spread of answers was fairly homogeneous, right? Disagree में भी उतने ही answers, लगभग उतने ही हैं जितने agree में हैं, जितने strongly. So if the spread was so homogeneous in terms of people saying that, some people are saying that हमको मुश्किल लगता है, कोई लोग बोलते हैं कि हमको internet का problem है. If that spread is so homogeneous, what according to you are the strong findings of your, if you were to tell us 4 important strong findings from this paper or from the data that you gathered, what would those strong findings be? Just numerically, descriptively also. The quantitative data does not have to be t-test, ANOVA, whatever. It can just be percentages because you've analyzed it only descriptively. That's fine. But in terms of the strength of responses, do you want to tell us something that you found starkly? That is the data telling you something very strongly?
We can say that the teachers did receive adequate support in terms of getting technical assistance, but they still found face-to-face teaching to be better. So even though they did have access to resources, they did have platforms that they could use with ease. We can say that we found that the teachers did prefer offline mode of teaching, and for the same reasons as student participation was better, And
the fact that if students are involved, like interactive with the classes and all, it could also result in their motivation level increasing. So we also found that since the students were not interactive much with the online platform in general, so that's also something that we found out, that it was teachers were not demotivated but not motivated enough, since students were not involved much, and there was a gap in interaction and communication with the students and the teachers.
yeah, and also the fact that they didn't have enough time to implement the resources, and they also felt like they couldn't track the learners' progress because yeah, there weren't many resources for that. They couldn't monitor the progress of the learners.
All right. Thank you, Yogita.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Yogita and Gargi. Yeah, yes, we've been talking about these comments on the research papers and such detailed comments. Yeah, so thank you, Yogita and Gargi. I'm sure you will take this further, and whatever suggestions of the research that, you know, in future you would carry out yourself, and give us more insightful information about teachers' perspective on online teachers. All the best for your future, and you as future researchers. Now we move on to the next aspect of our program. We've been talking about Dr. Wilbur Gonzalez, about how detailed analysis of all the papers, all the research questions, the methodology that he gave us and to the students. And he's really been helpful to the department all throughout. Whenever we ask Wilbur, could you come for a lecture or judge for as a judge spiritual paper, he is readily says yes and enthusiastically gives his insights into the different activities that we conduct at the department. So to formally welcome Dr. Wilbur, I would invite my colleague, Meet, to formally introduce Dr. Wilbur Gonzalez. And thereafter will be followed by a session on research by. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Meet, and I teach at the Department of Psychology at SP&D Women's College. And it's always a pleasure to introduce and interact with Wilbur. Introduce him all the more because he was a contemporary, a senior at the Department of Applied Psychology, where I did my master's in social psychology. He was always somebody we would go to with our frustrations, with our complaints about the department, and we'd ask him how he's finding ways through it and learn from things that he's told us. He's always been a support in that sense when we were young students trying to make our way in this mosaic of psychology at the department. And we've seen him as a teaching assistant. We've seen him as a supporting senior in the department. His feedback, his appreciation had always meant a lot and does still mean a lot. And so it's a pleasure that we have Wilbur here and that I have the opportunity to introduce him. Hello, Wilbur. I'm really glad you could make it and that you're talking to our students and addressing them. Formally, Dr. Wilbur Gonzalez is an assistant professor at the Department of Applied Psychology, University of Mumbai. He's also a freelance counseling psychologist and psychotherapist for about a decade now, and currently also involved in web-based counseling. He's completed his master's in psychology with a specialization in counseling and his PhD in psychology from the Department of Applied Psychology, University of Mumbai, Kalina. During his PhD, he was a recipient of the Vice Chancellor's Research Fellowship and later the UGC Junior Research Fellowship, or as we all know, the JRF. He later joined in as a permanent faculty at Parvatibai Chaugule College, Goa, where he served for a small stint of 3 months till he got selected at the University of Mumbai as a full-time assistant professor, where he's serving till date. His thrust research area has been the psychosocial and vocational issues of persons with disabilities. He has presented nearly more than 20 research papers in state, national, and international conferences. To mention some, the Centenary National Career Development Association Conference at Boston, USA, the World Congress on Excellence held at Punjab University, Chandigarh, International Conference on Sociology of Religion, jointly organized by Jadavpur University, Kolkata, and Lancaster University, England, Indian Science Conference held at the University of Mumbai, National Academy of Psychology Conference at IIT Chennai, so on and so forth. He's also served as a chairperson in scientific sessions and has been a speaker at many seminars. He has also published several research papers and book chapters in edited books and journals, such as the Journal of Psychological Research, International Journal of Disability Studies, Disability and Impairment, etc. Currently, Dr. Wilbur Gonzalez is a visiting teacher fellow at the prestigious Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla. He's also an executive council member of the Bombay Psychological Association and a member of the editorial board of their journal, The Bombay Psychologist. He currently also serves on the Board of Studies for Psychology at Parvati Bai Chaugule College, Marka. Thank you, Wilbur. The floor is now yours.
Yeah.
Welcome. Welcome again.
Thank you, Meet, for your kind words, and it's really nice to meet you. You have always been a dear friend and a colleague. And thank you, Madhuri ma'am, for inviting me. It's it's nice to interact with you all. Always Amita, okay, I've also been interacting over the years. So it's always been good to be back to your department, to your college, and interact with your students, and definitely be a part of Trishul, which is such an encouraging program for undergraduate students, because I feel there are very limited avenues for undergraduate students to get a chance to be exposed to research or the research process, right? So I look at it as a process, and that's what I would like to also speak about in my talk today, which I would like to highlight certain points about the process and how we could work on competency building in this process of becoming a better researcher. I would like to thank all the students for being here and sparing their time to interact with me, and probably we learn from each other. And I would like to share things which I have learned through the journey of being a researcher. I do not consider myself an established researcher, because it's like an ocean, and all my senior colleagues would agree with me that it's always that you feel that you do not know enough, right? So you always are a learner when it comes to research and understanding methodologies, understanding latest trends, understanding contemporary work. So it's an ocean of work out there, and an ocean of research related issues out there. And there's always something to learn, always something to grow with. And that's what I would like to actually touch upon in today's talk, or probably a guiding session, whatever we would like to look at it as. Fine. So I have also made a small PPT, just 4 or 5 slides, just to give some assistance to what I would like to speak about. And I would share that so that we have some reference to the points I'm talking about. Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay, so this topic which I chose to speak upon, okay, on how to approach scientific research in psychology, I chose this topic, and Madhuri ma'am was kind enough to give me the freedom to decide what I would like to talk about. And I felt, because I'm talking with young researchers who are who probably have a lot of fear for research, who have not actually got the real exposure to doing research. This would be a good probably a stimulating session, I would say, rather than an exposure, okay, to understand how to go about, okay, and what are the things you need to follow, what are the resources you can look at, how do you inculcate certain ideas, how do you what is that you grow in your competency of being a researcher. Because what happens is, if we do not engage in the process of being a researcher, you tend to become obsolete over time. Okay, many a times we feel that even as teachers, and many of my colleagues would agree that because we are so engaged in teaching and so much of workload of teaching, we tend to go on the backseat of doing research and engaging with the process of research. And over time also you tend to get a feeling that you are getting obsolete. You are not up to date with the recent trends in what is happening in research. But as you all are young and you all are novices, you all come with a lot of open mind, and that's what is beautiful about, I think, young researchers. You come with an open mind to learn. You come with an open mind to discover, explore what can be done in the field, and as a researcher, how can you learn, how can you grow. And even when students come for their post-graduation, they always seek for opportunities where they can assist senior teachers, professors there in their research, be a participant in their research work, aid them in whatever way they can, so that they look for learning opportunities. So keeping this in mind, I designed this small talk to speak about certain things which I feel are required to take note of when we enter the journey of becoming a researcher. Okay, and how can we look at these certain points when we inculcate the type of process of becoming a good researcher over time. As I said, it's a journey. Okay, and becoming a good researcher, establishing yourself as a competent researcher takes a lot of time. It is an ongoing process. Okay, and you get better by the day. So do not sit evaluating yourself and you feel that you're not good, and you'll always feel you're not good enough. When you start reading good research work, okay, you always have that feeling that oh, what am I doing? People are doing such advanced work. Okay, so that sense of feeling that you are not good enough, it's natural to come, but understand that it is always a journey. And if you understand which are the important things to do and take care of, okay, in this process, and you try to remain dedicated and continuously engaged in this process of learning and becoming a researcher, and you know how to do it. Okay, so today we will speak upon how to do it. How, this I said, it's an approach, okay, to scientific research in psychology. Okay, if you know how to do it, what are the things to take care of, what to read, what to focus upon, then you know which direction to enter in. And that's basically what I would try to touch upon in today's session, in today's talk with you all. So the basic outline of my research, talk today is, first I'll focus upon the nature of scientific inquiry, that what is the process of scientific inquiry, and most of the things you know, but we would just like to touch upon how in psychology the process of scientific inquiry has been. Okay, then we will look at what are the things you need to look at while preparing for a research. Okay, so what are the resources you look at when you are preparing for a research and when you look at growing as a researcher, right? Then we'll also look at certain observations I have made about students over years. Okay, when I'm guiding students in their MA programs, evaluating researchers, research work which is submitted by students, certain basic issues which come up, okay, lacunas which come up, so that you can learn from the process. And then finally we'll speak about how research reporting is done and why research reporting is important. Right. So this is what I would like to speak in, basically touch in my today's talk. Okay. So speaking about the nature of scientific inquiry, over years, okay, of psychology as, individuating itself as a science. Okay, from the time of when the first lab in psychology came up in Leipzig, Germany. Okay, in 1875, you may learn this in your, history of psychology. Learnings, okay, when you are in your initial years in your BA, the field has grown over time, okay, with experimental research, neuropsychological research, okay, qualitative research, okay, focusing on subjective experiences of people, meaning-making process, okay, how social processes influence individuals. Okay, so researchers today in psychology have moved beyond the quantitative approach or experimental approach or typical survey methods in research, okay, to look at even research questions which try to engage the qualitative inquiry into. And then we also have moved to something called as the mixed method research. How does the process of scientific inquiry begin? Okay, for every researcher at some point of time, okay, when you are engaging with a research topic or you want to start doing some research, okay, it always starts with a point of curiosity. Now, when I say curiosity, the basic problem many people face is which area should I research in? Okay, now that no one can tell you. Okay, that's always dependent on the reading you have done. Okay, so how much exposure you have. Okay, first of all, to know which area you want to research it, you have to know what are the different areas in psychology available for research. Okay, and that would not happen till you have done somewhat a bit of extensive reading, or at least even if you have not gone very in depth, you have at least try to review and look through, okay, what are the different areas of psychology and what are the different areas of research within psychology. Okay, so within, for example, cognitive psychology also there would be different areas of research. Okay, within personality psychology there would be different methods and areas of research. Okay, so within psychology and different fields of psychology also there would be different methods, different. So many people find a problem of, first of all, what area to it, so that basically comes over time. Okay, that what is your niche area, what you would like to invest in research. Okay, if you look at it, okay, as a student you may find certain topics interesting and relevant at a certain point of time. Like, for example, you all were in the pandemic now and you all found that studying online behavior, okay, online behavior and factors which influence the online behavior, okay, in teaching learning experiences, okay, is something important because the pandemic had forced people to be in this process. And then what else? Okay, so it was a current curiosity which you had and you came up with that curiosity. But what happens in the actual scientific ethos or in the actual scientific ecosystem of a discipline, okay, it normally does not work that way, right? Unless you're doing action research or you're doing some field-based research, okay, for some problem solving, that is fine. Okay, normally it begins with researchers who establish themselves over time, dedicate themselves to one stream of research or one line of research, okay, one area of research which they spend many years working in. Okay, and that is their niche area. Okay, over time it becomes their expertise area, whatever it, okay, that is after working for 10, 15, 20 years. And that's why you'll find a lot of researchers who have established themselves, who have got recognition for work in different areas, okay, are people who have dedicated a number of years researching in that area, and that's why they have developed expertise, they have developed some type of command in that type of area. Now, how does curiosity develop? Okay, and what do we mean by curiosity over here? Okay, curiosity comes from reading. Okay, reading important text. Okay, and we will speak about when we are speaking on the part of preparation. Okay, it comes from the entire idea of knowing, okay, what is happening in that area. Okay, so what is the research work being done? Okay, what are the theories being spoken about? Okay, explanatory theories being spoken about. Okay, which explain certain findings. Okay, what is the nature of research work? What are the methodological issues of research in that particular area? For example, if you are a researcher working in the area of personality psychology, okay, so you will be discussing about psycholexical studies, you will be discussing about psychometric issues in measurement of personality, you will be speaking about trait factor approaches versus clinical approaches of understanding personality, you will be speaking about motivational issues related to personality, based on need theories. Okay, so these are different readings you would engage in, and probably you would pick up one area which you would work with. Suppose you may like to work with the trait factor type of an approach or the trait approach, okay, in personality, and then you would also try to see, try to explore the, historically how the trait approach has developed, okay, and how, from the 3-factor model to the 16-factor model to the 5-factor model today. Okay, now there's also 6-factor model. Okay, things have evolved over time. Okay, so you may do a historical review, okay, which gives you a type of a know-how, okay, of that area. Once you develop that type of know-how in that area, okay, you or a good knowledge base of that area, then you are ready to ask certain relevant research questions. Okay, research questions just do not pop up in your head. Okay, it's not like how people describe Newton. Okay, the apple fell on his head and he discovered, the theory of gravity. Okay, it does not work like that. It's not lazy curiosity, or it's not raw curiosity which people show in research normally, especially academic and scientific research. It is based on certain type of reading, okay, keeping up with the trends of work being done in that area, based on which you identify certain gaps, okay, and you determine a new research problem. Okay, you determine a new research problem which tries to address or answer questions, okay, related to that gap of research you have found. Okay, so you always, are the researcher, are actively engaging in reading, thinking, reasoning, okay, and identifying, okay, what needs to be still answered, right? So once you identify what needs to be still answered, okay, or what new research question I can ask, okay, to the existing work or body of work in a certain area, okay, then I know that I'm adding or I'm contributing to the knowledge base in that area in some minimal way. Okay, it is not that you are, with one research that you are having some great findings and you are contributing a lot. Okay, a researcher always has to be humble that every research they do or they contribute, they're contributing in the minimal way to some understanding related to already existing theory, okay, already existing body of work in a particular area. Okay, it may be a very minimalistic understanding, okay, but it would add to people, other researchers who try to replicate that study, who try to ask new research questions based on what you have said. Okay, and that's how the process of research basically works. Okay, once we have a research problem in mind or a research question in mind, then we determine what we understand as the method of research. Okay, so method is basically nothing but the organized way of steps of collecting data, okay, organizing your study, looking at what methods of data collection you would involve in, okay, what techniques you would engage in, okay, how would you analyze data, okay, all these things come under the idea of method. Okay, we'll be also speaking about method and what needs to be done when we are speaking about the the preparatory part of that. Okay, how do you increase your knowledge based in methods? Okay, and then you move to something called as observations. Now, when we speak about observations in psychological research, we look at raw observations, okay, observations with the naked eye, which are looked, as based from a, analytic framework where you observe people and you try to understand their behavior, and you probably, have a checklist and you make certain observations or you take certain notes and analyze that. Okay, remember one thing, any data point, okay, is an observation. Okay, it may be collected through some type of qualitative framework. Okay, you may do it to focus groups, you may do it through a type of grounded theory interviewing process. Okay, you may engage in type of secondary data analysis, all these forms, okay, some form of observation, or you take data points which are observed from some quantitative measures. Okay, you have an experiment, okay, based on the DV measures you get certain quantifiable, okay, numeric points or data points. Okay, all these are observations on self-report measures also are observations. Okay, so all these become observations because they tell us something about the behavior, the emotional state, the cognitive processes, whatever we are interested in studying, okay, in that particular research area. Okay, based on the data points, we do a certain analysis. Okay, we interpret the data. Okay, we explain the data based in line with previous research done. Okay, previous theories which are existent. Okay, and based on which we draw certain conclusions about the problem, and we tell whether we, if it's a hypothesis-based study, which is mostly seen in quantitative study. Okay, it's the purpose is for hypothesis testing. Then we try to say whether the hypothesis was accepted or not. Okay, results found were in line with the hypothesis or not. Okay, so you may have a concluding statement like that. You may also point out certain limitations of the study. Okay, and certain limitations of the study. Now, many times in student research, what I've observed is normally there are sometimes 10 to 12, list of 10 to 12 limitations. Okay, and many of which are actually not limitations. Okay, many students speak about things like research was done in Mumbai city, so it cannot be generalized elsewhere. Okay, that is basically the scope of your research. That is what we actually call a delimitation. Okay, that is the boundary of your research. Okay, you are right in saying that, but that does not become a limitation of your study. Okay, limitations normally should evolve. Okay, in actual scientific work, if you read good research papers, okay, limitations actually evolve not because of certain negligence is done as a researcher. Okay, as a young researcher you can do that. Okay, I'm not saying that you will realize this all right now, but I'm just talking about how the scientific ecosystem works. Okay, it is not normally as a result of certain negligence or a certain methodological flaw. Okay, but it arises out of certain observations the researcher makes during the process of research, or based on the findings of the research, that probably something else could have been done better. Okay, and probably that would have changed the nature of the results. Okay, now those limitations always sometimes set the basis for asking a new research question. So even though this may be looked as a very linear process diagrammatically, it becomes a very cyclical process, okay, in research. Okay, so based on certain shortcomings of the previous research, okay, you can always ask new research questions, okay, and try to test the hypothesis related to the new research question. Okay, and that's how, if you look at good journals, like for example Journal of Experimental Psychology of APA, or Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by APA, okay, all these good journals, if you see, these journals in one article, okay, one published article, would have a series of 4 or 5 experiments, published in that very article. I always tell my student to do this one exercise, and this exercise is very, very helpful. And I would also recommend each one of you, even at this young age, to read these articles and do this exercise, what I'm going to tell you. Always ask, always read all the 5 experiments. Suppose there are 5 experiments reported in an article, read all the 5 experiments and try to ask, okay, the second experiment, okay, what question was it answering different from the first experiment? Okay, so all are based on, connected with certain theoretical logic. Remember one thing, all these studies are related with some type of theoretical logic. Okay, but they are asking a slightly differential question based on certain observations made, okay, or certain limitations observed in the first experiment. Same way, the third experiment would be based on certain limitations or certain new questions which could have arisen out of studies 1 and 2. Okay, so that becomes a very interesting link. Okay, now that helps us, okay, as a researcher, develop, once we start this reading process and we try to reason out, okay, try to understand how research 2 is connected to research 1 and what is the new research question the research is asking. Over time, you realize you will develop a better ability to ask, research questions, okay, or to identify gaps, or identify, certain shortcomings or certain missing points in, existing body of work, right? So this would develop a capacity over time. It will not happen overnight. Remember one thing, that's a process. Once you engage in this process and you begin reading in this form, okay, you will understand that you will able to develop that ability. The reason being is, most of our educational years, okay, and that's the problem, even when we guide MA dissertation, even PhD research work, okay, we notice, because we are so engaged in rote learning, right, or descriptive reading, or learning for answering exams, and forgetting it over time and stuff like that. Okay, we actually do not reason out with what we are reading. Okay, we do not ask questions, right? We do not make observations about them, okay, which are personal observations. As okay, we do not think, reflect about what we are reading, and that's the reason why we do not, somehow researchers, okay, are not conditioned to think, reason out, and ask new research questions. Okay, and whenever I tell my students, even nowadays I'm taking this MA dissertation guiding sessions, okay, and when I ask them what is new in this research question, okay, or how are you asking a new research question, they find it very difficult to come up with that. And that would not happen, because somewhere that capacity takes time to develop. Okay, and that would happen if you engage with this type of process. Okay, so in broadly in in psychology as a field, okay, research follows either inductive approach. Okay, so from making observations, okay, based on certain research work you have done, you identify patterns. Based on the patterns, you try to generate a type of a theory or a type of a body of understanding or body or a meaning making process, okay, related to a research topic. Okay, or you engage in a deductive approach, from where from theories you derive hypothesis, from you test the hypothesis. Okay, you make observations, test the hypothesis, and you draw certain conclusions about those hypotheses. Okay, that is what we call as a deductive approach. The inductive approach is mainly meant for generating theory. Okay, and deductive approach is mainly meant for testing theory. Now, by and large, they say, people draw this loose connection that, which I will not say is loose, but somewhat right. Inductive approach more reflects the qualitative approach to research. Deductive approach reflects the more quantitative approach to research. But there are quantitative methods also, which, for example, a psycholexical type of approach, okay, is more inductive in nature. Okay, because you look at self-descriptors, you look at frequency of self-descriptors, you look at adjectives, in a language. Okay, look at frequency of synonymous adjectives, and then you draw patterns, and then you develop theories. Okay, so it's more inductive in nature that way, right? So we cannot compartmentalize it, but by and large, this is a type of an understanding. So what happens once as a researcher? Okay, so in a scientific ecosystem in the field, okay, what happens as a researcher once you report your studies? Now, what do we mean by reporting studies? One way of reporting your findings is basically, how you all have done. Okay, come to research conventions, go to seminars, conferences, present your research work. Okay, many times in if you go to a lot of international conferences, and very established researchers or a group of researchers or collaborators working on research over a period of time. Okay, sometimes we have people working on research projects for 1 or 2 years. Okay, they normally come even to conferences and they present certain preliminary findings of ongoing research. Okay, so the entire research project or research work is goes on for a long period of time. Okay, so they may come and put in some preliminary findings or some mid-stage findings. Okay, the purpose of conferences, research conventions is basically to present, let people know that this is the nature of work being done. Okay, what you are engaging in currently, and so that people can give feedback, ask questions. You as a researcher can probably get insights from the type of questions people ask. People may contribute, people may criticize. Okay, people may show certain methodological issues in the way you are approaching research, and then the researcher also feels, okay, that probably this is a valid point. Okay, may accept, reject, okay, depending on their openness, and may say it's a valid point and this needs to be incorporated in their research work. Okay, so this is one way of looking at reporting research, but the main way of dissemination of research findings, what we say, or reporting research findings, is publishing research. Okay, once you publish research in a good journal which is accessible, first of all, if you publish in a good peer-reviewed journal, and I'll speak about also how to identify good journals somewhere in my next slide. Okay, once you publish it in a good peer-reviewed journal, okay, that your work has some good standing. Okay, because it goes to a peer review process to people who have worked in a similar area. Okay, and somewhere there's a validation that your research is somewhere sound enough, okay, or contribute something interesting to be published. Okay, if you publish it in any journal, okay, then it's just a self-serving type of we can call it a self-serving type of bias. Okay, it's like you gratifying yourself of just getting it published somewhere. Okay, and you feel good about it, but you do not know whether your research work was good enough, whether it actually has the validation of a scientific community working in a similar area. Okay, so this happens, okay, only in good journals who follow a proper peer review process, who are well-established journals. Okay, those journals are based in some good publishing houses, okay, who have very standard practices, okay. So that is always a good process in a type of a scientific ecosystem. And what happens when results are reported, okay? When results are reported, okay, this also gives a chance for other people to read your research, okay, understand, okay, the different nuances of your research, that how you conceptualized your study, how you theorized your study, what are the hypotheses you were testing, okay, what method you engaged in, okay, what steps you took to collect the data or conduct a study, okay. And they may either replicate a study with a different population, in a different culture, in a different context, to check whether the same results would hold true, okay, or the same findings could be replicated in their culture, in a different population, in a different context, okay. Or they may ask an additionally new question, okay, a slight, they may add a small variation to the research, okay, add a new variable, change the way they look at the method, okay, the way they approach the research, okay, the way they approach conducting the research based on certain critique of their, or gaps they observe in your research, okay. And they may engage in some variation to basically, test the theory by, engaging in some variations in our this, okay. So these are processes, okay. This somewhere gives, some type of, so once your work is identified, considered interesting, okay. So if you ask a good research question, that's the benefit, okay. People consider incident interesting, and they feel that, okay, they also need to inquire in the same line, okay. Or if you are already working in a area of work which is probably engaged with a lot of researchers, like for example, memory research is one area of research, in experimental study, which there are a lot of journals dedicated to it, and a lot of work and a lot of researchers working in that area, okay. So a lot of research work is done, and so you'll find people also reading articles, citing articles, trying to replicate a study, and that somewhere also gives more insight to the line of work you are doing, okay. So it also gives people a chance to verify, okay, that what you are hypothesizing, what you are proposing, okay, what you are asserting makes, holds true, has a certain type of grounding in the type of understanding what you are contributing to your research, okay. It gives also a chance for people to critique your work, okay. So if you are, critics normally come up, no one will, hold a particular research and communicate a critique to you, okay. But if you are an established researcher in a field and you have been working over a research topic for probably 5-10 years, okay, and you are known for your research in that, then people would probably, come up with a critique of your work and, correspond that critique, okay. So a lot of journals today, okay, not today, but over time also have published critiques of, in editorials or in special issues or special sections in journals, okay. So you'll always find this, letter to author and response of author, where, certain critiques or critical analysis of their research work, of their theorizing is done, okay. So that's how actually a scientific ecosystem in the discipline works, okay. But that happens only if you are a dedicated researcher in a particular field for over time, okay. No one would pick up one research with isolated research you have done somewhere, okay, unless people do not have time. They have a lot of time, sorry, okay, and they just found some problem and they want to engage in that self-gratifying process to point out things to you, okay. Or maybe they want to communicate. They may do it politely by putting a mail to you. There's nothing wrong in doing it, okay. Many people have put mails. So we have all to put mails to each other, and say that I read your research paper, and that's a healthy way of doing it. But publishing a critique, okay, takes only when you have actually been established as a researcher in that area, okay. So basically, this is what I was trying to touch upon. How does this entire nature of scientific engagement in the discipline works in, okay. Now this may look very far-fetched for you, okay. The reason I'm showing you this picture is because this could, as I said, you all are very young, okay. The reason I'm showing you this picture is because this is a time where you can start thinking in these lines, okay. Others, what happens, you finish your PhD, and by the time I know that, many of these things I realized when I completed my PhD and I start touching my 30s. Okay. And then, you are in your 30s, and I do not know whether this hypothesis is true. As you move with age, okay, your, ferociousness sometimes of, engaging reading, okay, your agility sometimes decreases. Okay. Or, your openness to, I'm not saying about me, but I'm saying I've observed it across people. Okay. Your, okay. So when you are a young mind, okay, if you start thinking in these lines, okay, that over time I want to dedicate myself, I want to understand these processes, I want to engage with these processes, okay, I want to focus on certain areas, okay, this would help you establish as a researcher over time. Okay, if you are actually interested, look, all psychologists would not go and become researchers. Okay. Some may get into practice, some may get into, research, okay, some may get into academic work and stuff like that, okay, or academic and research work together, right? So all of y'all may not become researchers and may be doing research from the idea of learning research, okay. But if those who are interested in research, you should need to start understanding this larger macro level, idea of, the whole, as I said, the ecosystem of the scientific world of, in psychology, and try to work in those lines, right? Now, how to prepare yourself, okay, as a researcher. Now, the basic challenge, okay, in our country especially, I feel, okay, and these are just my observations, I may be wrong, people may differ in their opinion. Yeah.
Are you on slide number 4? Because we can still see the slide on outline.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you all missed my second slide, that means.
Yep.
Okay.
No, so have you changed it? Because we can see the outline slide even now.
Yeah, one second. I had changed it long. The outline slide was changed long back. One second. Oh, the second slide was very important. Thanks for bringing it to my notice. Can you still see?
Yeah, now we can see this. Yeah.
You can see the nature of scientific inquiry.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically this was the linear process which I was showing, which I shown in arrows, and I was saying also it's a cyclical process. And then I was speaking about inductive and deductive approaches to research. And then I was speaking about reporting research, replicating research, okay, how people replicate your research, verify your findings, support it, reject it, okay. People may over time, if you are working in a certain area, write a critique on your work, okay. If you are engaged in an area over time and people you are recognized for that work in that area may write a critique for you, or or people may individually also put a mail to you and tell you that, okay, these are my observations of your work. Yeah, so this is in summary what I was speaking on this slide. Sorry that somehow technology facilitates, but sometimes can be an obstruction also. But yeah, now coming to this slide is visible to you all? Preparing yourself for research?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, fine. Okay. So now the basic challenge for researchers in the field of psychology, I feel, basically is the lack of good exposure and good training opportunities, okay, that is from a very young age, okay. And I have been a victim of it, and many of us have been, okay, that we do not have good avenues, okay, to probably engage in research, okay, as a young mind, okay, unless you're doing a PhD and later get into a university or a college setup where research is encouraged. That is also very conditional, okay, or get into an organization which is research oriented, or institution which is very research oriented, which is very good research encouragement is found in very few institutes in our country, okay. Sadly that, okay, you can just name a handful of top universities and top institutes in the country, okay, or some isolated researchers in certain in certain universities who find the zeal to somehow manage their time, find self-motivating type of this, and continue to engage themselves in research, okay. However, compared to a lot of developed countries, okay, research infrastructure, research exposure, research training, okay, we are far behind, and that's something what we need to accept. Okay, वो भ्रम में रहे हम तो we never able to understand our shortcomings and work over them. Okay, so that is something which we all need to accept, and probably okay, we'll improve over time. We're getting better over time. Needless to say that. Okay, and thanks for the efforts like your college is doing, and some other institutes which organize such conventions, which give students some exposure at least to engage in the research process. Now, how to overcome this? Okay, अभी ठीक है, नहीं है तो नहीं है, research training नहीं है तो नहीं है. Okay, I found that over time a self-learning approach, okay, whatever the shortcoming is, okay, of a self-learning approach is the best possible option over here. Okay, now how to go about it? Okay, and this is a normal guidance I always give my students, and always tell them that if you want to become a good researcher over time, this is probably what you can engage in. Okay, now when we are reading, okay, or engaging with a research idea, okay, like many of you all have come up with some very interesting research topics, research ideas, okay, and what I was reading also among the 11 groups which presented, okay, or some of you all I know are MA students here, BA students, so who would be engaging some research dissertation, research project. You come up with a very interesting idea and you want to read more about it. Now, the basic problem I have seen, even in our MA program where students come, okay, when you ask them, where have you read this research from? And they will tell you that, oh, my TY book, or my, my textbook, which I had in my, in my second year, or some book which I was reading, I came across this research, and through this research, I have designed this research, okay, by reading that research. Now, understand one thing, it is simple, okay, and very simple, okay. Books, authored books, are not a good place to read about research, okay. I'm not saying the book by itself is not good, okay. The purpose of the book is to use research to explain something, okay. The purpose of the book is not to explain the research in itself, okay, or to detail out the research, or to give insight into the research. It uses the research work to give insight into what the author of the book is trying to say, okay. So it serves a secondary purpose, and hence reading from an authored book some research is not a good practice, okay. It's very clear, okay. Then what you need to do, and another problem with authored books is, know that when books are written by authors, okay, they spend good, sometimes 4 or 5 years also in writing a very good book, and it's a long process, and getting it published. By the time it goes through a publication process and actually comes out in the market, sometimes it may be also 5-6 years, okay. I'm just stretching it, okay. It may be less or more depending, okay, the nature of book, how big the book is, and how many volumes and stuff like that, okay. But okay, by the time, okay, the research work which is referred to and cited in that book, okay, in very minimalistic ways, okay, you may have a very small 4 or 5 line description of a particular research, or about its findings, or about what the researchers did, okay. These researchers have already become old, okay. So they might have actually, by the time you are reading the book, okay, so you might be reading a book which was published in 2011 or 2012, okay, which has research work published which was done in the year 2000 or 1999, okay. So what you are reading, okay, is basically research which is 20 years back, okay, because it's not that textbooks in your reference book, you are reading a book which is published in 2019, 2020, okay. So you are reading already books which are way back, okay. The best way to identify good research and to read research material is to identify journals, okay, good journals, and read research articles from these journals, okay. You may also read theoretical articles so that you understand the theoretical basis, you understand theoretical arguments, you understand theoretical issues raised, okay, in a particular area, okay. You may read theoretical articles, okay. You may read review-based articles, which try to sum up certain, or concise and put across work done in a particular area, okay, research work done in a particular area, okay. So you may read such articles, but these give you first-hand information about recent work which is done, okay. I always tell my students, okay, to begin reading, okay, work which was published in journal in the last 5 years, okay. Do not go behind it, And there's a reason for that, okay? Because one interesting, sorry, there's some disturbance outside. Just give me a second. Okay, I think this will take some time. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay,
There's a slight amount of echo, Wilbur, sir.
yeah, because there's some, this, I don't know what it's called, that fogging work which goes on, no, for this mosquitoes and all, it's happening outside my building. So because that is something, okay, I think it's gone now. Yeah, so we can continue. Now it's fine, there's still an echo.
No, it's better. It's better.
Right? Okay, fine. Okay, so yeah, what I was saying was, read from good journals. Now, how do I identify good journals? Okay, in a field. First of all, there are certain publishers, I would tell you, which maintain good standards of publishing, and so their journals associated to these publishers are by and large good standards. They follow standard procedures, standard practices. Their rejection rates of articles are high. Okay, so if you read journals which are published by these publishing houses, okay, or publishers, they can be by and large understood as journals which publish good research work. Okay, like for example, you can take journals published by APA. Okay, even if you go on the APA website, or even if you go on Google and type journals published by APA, you'll get a whole list. Okay, and based on your area of interest, you'll get probably dedicated research journals which are meant for looking at researchers related to that area. Okay, then you have publishers like Routledge, okay, like Sage, Springer, all these good publishers, they maintain some good standards and peer review process for publishing work in their journals. Another criteria I feel is good to take into consideration is looking at something called as the impact factor. Impact factor basically is an indice or a metric which tells you about the amount of researchers who have reviewed work from these journals, okay, and consider this work good, and that's why they have cited this work in their research work or in their publication. Okay, so they have cited work from this source journal, okay, or this source article which is published in a journal and cited it. Okay, so based on the citations, you calculate something called as the impact factor, which is normally done over a period of 2 years, and then sometimes you also have a 5 years impact factor of a journal. So the impact factor may keep on changing slightly. Okay, if researchers, publishers maintain some standard. So these are some indices. Now, what is considered as a good impact factor? Okay, based on my experience, there's never a sad thing. Okay, the impact factors can be as low as 1, or some journals may not have impact factors also. Do not read journals which do not have any impact factors. That means either people are not reading them, not citing for them, or the journal is not bothered in engaging that process of indexing the journal and finding out the impact factor of the journal, or getting that process. Okay, so I feel that in psychology, okay, any journal which has an impact factor above 2, okay, to a higher range, okay, it can go to 7, 8, 9. Okay, there are very few journals in research journals in psychology who have somewhere above 9 or above 9. Okay, so 2 to 5 also is a good impact factor. You can say that articles published in these journals, okay, are good standard work and well accepted worker. Okay, now there are many reasons. I will not get into that. Okay, how impact factor across, even if it's a good journal, it may still have a low impact factor, and that all depends on many factors. Okay, so for example, if a research area is a very small research area, okay, and so like for example, area which I work in, rehabilitation psychology, there are hardly less researchers working in it as compared to people who work in personality psychology and so on and so forth, okay, or cognitive psychology, and hence number of researchers reading the journals, citing work from the journals would be much lesser. Okay, and hence there could be variations in the impact factor. Such journals which are not widely studied, or areas which are not widely studied, journals in those areas may come, have an impact factor like 1.5 to, you'll find even the APA journals which are considered the best journals. Okay. So like Journal of Rehabilitation Psychology or some other journals, okay, they have an impact factor like 2.5, 3, 1, 1.5. Okay, so that is because the area which is researched, okay, is not researched by many people. Okay, and that's why not many citations, and not many citations, automatically the impact factor suffer. So there are some reasons like that, but somewhere by and large, if you take 2 as a, this, it's considered good. Once you identify these, journals, okay, from these publishers, look at the impact factor, then, these are good journals to identify articles from and read from them. Now, many times the problem comes about accessibility. Okay, if you do not, your institution does not have a good e-resource, okay, or a e-database like EBSCO, JSTOR, SpringerLink. Thankfully, because the UGC InfibNet type of, support system, okay, nowadays a lot of institutions are getting access to many of the e-resources, even though if they are limited. Okay, but we are getting access to e-resources. Okay, so you can sometimes, if you find a good article, many of the journals, they may not give you the access to the full article. They may give you access to the abstract, okay, or the author details. You can always write to the author and ask them whether they could pass that article to you, because you do not have access to it and you would really want to read their work. Okay, so that all can be done. Okay, there are different ways. Okay, and I'm sure your teachers will guide you on how to go about it. But as I said, read from journals, good journals, so you know what are the recent work done in that area, recent trends of work done, what is the contemporary research work being done in that area. Okay, so that would help you with. Now, what do you read authored books from? Authored books are good to read about concepts, to understand concepts. Okay, suppose you are not very clear about certain concepts, or not clear about certain method. For example, you are reading about research designs. Okay, go to a good research methodology book, read about research design. Books are meant for that, for conceptual understanding. Okay, do not read researches from books. Okay, do not try to look at research work, cited in books or described in books in minimalistic sense as, good place to read research work. Okay, they are not meant for that. Okay, they are meant for gaining, conceptual understanding, gaining better understanding about the field overall. Okay, so you can read it for conceptual work. Now, 3 sources I would tell you which are very good, okay, for different reasons. Okay, one is this journal by APA called Psychological Review, second is Psychological Bulletin, and third is Psychological Methods. Now, Psychological Review tries to look at the recent trends or theoretical work being, theories and alternate theories which have evolved over time. Okay, so a lot of established researchers are invited, or people who who are well established in the area write articles in Psychological Review, and it has a impact factor as high as 9. Okay, the Psychological Bulletin, I think, has an impact factor as high as 17, and Psychological Methods, I think, somewhere around 11, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so Psychological Review basically focuses, if you want to understand theoretical issues in a given area of research. Okay, you want to understand theories, theoretical issues, alternate theories, critique of theories in a particular research area. Okay, go and read some volumes or certain issues of Psychological Review. It's a very, very rich source. Okay, if you want to understand research work or research findings summarized over time, okay, or researchers who have tried to give you an essence, or give you a type of write up on research findings of, or critique of research work done in a particular area over time, Psychological Bulletin is the best place to go and have an understanding. Okay, these places you'll get, in an article you'll able to get a good comparative understanding, a good critical view of a given area. Okay, this creates a lot of insights if you end up reading about the field, about the scientific engagement with the field. Okay, if you read such material. Psychological Methods is basically a good source. Okay, again, a journal published by, which writes about evolving methods. There are even special issues, like, for example, on big data analytics, meta-analysis and stuff like that. They have come up even special issues. Okay, so if you are interested in a particular method or reading about a certain method, okay, you can always go back to Psychological Methods as a journal and read from it, okay, read critiques about that method, read limitations about that method, okay, certain reviews about certain methods, certain changes in the method which have evolved over time, okay. All this type of insight learning will take place if you engage with a journal like Psychological Methods. Handbooks become very important, okay, when you want to handbooks are normally, and the good handbooks, okay, like Oxford Press, Oxford has published a lot of handbooks in different areas of psychology, okay. Sage has some good handbooks also. Then Cambridge has published a lot of handbooks in, so handbooks are normally invited writers who have, authors or researchers who have worked in an area over time, okay, write chapters in these books, okay, summarizing a body of lot of research work done in that area. So if you want, as a as a researcher who is new to that area and want to get a at one look, at one glance, or in one reading, want to get a type of a summarized or a deeper understanding into the overall picture of research work done in that area, contemporary research work done in that area, handbooks is a very good place to go and update yourself in that. Okay, so if you read handbooks by Cambridge, okay, APA has some handbooks, okay, APA also has handbooks on research methods, okay, again very good source, okay, they have 3 volumes if I'm not mistaken, okay. Sage has some good handbooks on qualitative research, okay. So these become good resource, material to actually go and gain an understanding of, if you want to understand, okay, rather than reading, it will take a lot of time for you to read researches published in the last 5 years, right? But you want to understand a summarized understanding of probably what is the body of research work done in that particular area, okay. Chapters in these handbooks of, which are dedicated for special, like you'll have handbooks of social psychology, handbooks of, cognitive psychology, handbooks of, learning and memory, depending, okay, how these publishers, come out with volumes and come out with different issues of handbooks, okay. So Cambridge, Oxford handbooks are very good, even APA has some handbooks, as I told you, okay. Body of research work which, established researchers have tried to give an overall picture or overall understanding of work being done, okay. So they become very, very good resources. So as young researchers, if you tap on the right areas. Others, what we are doing, we are just reading, trying to understand, in a very haphazard manner, and we do not know the right direction on how to approach, okay, engaging with this learning process, okay. So if you follow what I told you right now, okay, I'm telling you, over, not now, but in 5 to 7 years, okay, you'll at least become a good, decent researcher. At least you'll get into the pathway of becoming a good, decent researcher, okay. If you want to read some classical work, okay, in an area, okay, suppose many of you all study self-esteem, okay, and you want to read like Rosenberg's, classical book on, society and self-image, okay, his original work when he was conceptualizing the idea of self-esteem, okay, you can go to classical work to understand what authors, have originally conceptualized, theorize these original conceptions as, okay. This gives you good view of, what were the original conception and how a field has grown in an area over time, okay. So that gives you, sets the context right as a researcher. So these things are very important. But to do that, okay, there are 3 approaches which are very 4 approaches actually. One is try to get access to good libraries. Do not be lazy, even if your college may be not having college, I'm just talking general, okay, institute, college may not have a updated library. Go visit other libraries, okay, come to go to some university, go to TISS, go to SNDT, go to Mumbai University, take a membership for some days, access journals, access resources, try to read, okay. Access is very important. For that, motivation is very important. As a researcher, if you are not motivated enough to engage with the research process, your learning will not be exponential, okay. Develop an analytical frame of mind, okay. Even when you are reading some research work, okay, always ask questions, okay. Why did the researcher say this, okay, or what is that researcher trying to imply, okay. Why did the researcher choose this method or some other methods available in psychology, okay. Develop an analytical frame of mind, ask questions, reason out with what the just do not read stuff descriptively. That would always help you become a good researcher, okay. Cross-referencing is a good technique, okay. Now I was speaking earlier that you read recent bodies of work, okay. So read work which is published in the last 5 years or last 3 years, okay. The reason being is suppose if I read an article which is, of my interest area, which was published in 2019, okay, when I cross-reference, what is cross-referencing? Basically, you might be knowing this definitely. You go to the reference list, okay, at the end of the article and identify articles which are related to the similar area. Because normally people would cite articles of research work in the same area or same line of research, right? So you look at the reference list and then you backsource, you backtrack, okay, these could also be important reading for me. But know that if an article is published in 2019, okay, you will not have an article, in the reference list which is from 2020, because that has not happened by the time the author has published it. Okay, so you will have articles which are published back from 2019, okay, 2018, 17, and 2000 and 1999 also might be. Okay, so but if you read the old articles, that's why reading recent articles is very important, because then cross-referencing makes sense. Because if you read an article, in 2000, okay, and you use a cross-referencing for that, you are going back dated, okay, you are going and reading articles published in 1985, early 1990s, okay, which may be obsolete research or may not, research in that area might have grown very much in that area, okay. So that's why I always try to read recent work, recently published work, and then cross-reference so that you can know, the other alternate works done earlier, okay, and how this research work is asking a new research question, identifying a new gap in that research area, okay, which is different from, how earlier researchers have addressed it methodologically and through theoretically. Okay, one important, we have always heard about literature review. Okay, methodological review is also a very, very important thing. Apart from looking at researchers, how they have theorized, okay, looked at past researches and explained their researches. Also look at, suppose you are interested in researching in an area, okay, I always tell my research students, go and do a methodological review. Okay, so people who are dealing with a certain type of research question which aligns with your type of research question, or attending to a research problem which aligns with the type of research problem you are dealing with, what are the different methods they have used, okay, to address this research problem, right? And that's how, you'll have your guide, you'll have your supervisors, you'll have your teachers who will be giving you assistance, okay, and telling you that it's for this research question, it may be better to use the experimental method, or this research question requires following a qualitative approach, okay, or some other thing, okay. Now they may give you insight, but again, these are all limited, okay. You as a researcher should be very proactive and try and go and do a methodological review. Ask this question, that what are the methods used by researchers who are trying to address a similar research question as to mine, okay. How did they approach the studies? What care did they take while conducting the studies? Okay, what method they used? How did they collect data? How much data they collected? Okay, what type of analytical methods they employed? Okay, why did they do this over other researchers? Compare the researches and see that which method. You may read 5 researches, 6 researches, 10 researches in the similar area, and you may find there are some variations in the type of method and the way they have approached the research. According to you as a researcher, after reading the 5-10 researches, ask yourself which would be the best possible method, okay, when applied to your type of research problem, okay, or what makes sense to you. If you engage in this process, then your reasoning, even with methods, okay, become much better. And then you always have psychological method. There's a journal to fall back upon, research methodology books to fall back upon to get a conceptual understanding of certain designs, and statistics books and so on and so forth, to sharpen your understanding about different areas. Okay, so this is something what I feel, preparatory research work, or so-called well-guided research engagement needs to be done. Okay, so if you follow this thing what I told you, I'm sure that in 5 to 10 years from now, you'll become sound researchers, you'll get a sound understanding, but it requires continuous engagement. Now, based on certain observations, okay, and these are, okay, I might have given this in certain points I had made to you all and communicated to you all. These are certain observations I had seen in student research, even while students working with me, okay. One thing is, there's a faulty approach towards starting research, okay. I've seen many students, and amazingly a lot of amount of students and researchers who start with the idea of asking a question, what variable should I take and what scales are available? Okay, they start from this research point. This is not the way you start thinking about research. Okay, you always go and review body of work or body of research work done in that area. Okay, as I told you, try to theorize or try to see some explanatory theoretical framework. Now look, there would be conceptual theories, there would be explanatory theories. Okay, and this I'm talking from more from a quantitative research point of view. Okay, so conceptual theories may not be very helpful for us to model our research upon. Okay, I'll tell you why. For example, I had a student who was, working on a research area, and she comes to me and she says that my research is based on certain schema theory. Okay, I'm forgetting the name of the author. Okay, and that schema theory gives 16 different types of schemas people, are influenced by. Okay, I said fine, but this is conceptual understanding of the nature of schemas or how schemas can be understood as differential from each other. This is not explanatory. It does not explain how certain factors influence other factors. Okay, it does not explain certain cause effect relationships. Okay, this is not explanatory. Okay, so your research design is schema is just one variable or one process in your research which you are considering. Okay, it does not tell you about the other variables or how it is related to the other variables are connected. So this theory cannot be looked at as a theory which you are basing your research upon. Okay, you are just linking it because there is, that is also schema, and one of your study point is also schema. It is not an explanatory research. But if you take a theory like, for example, self-determination theory of motivation, that is an explanatory research because it speaks about the processes which influences your, type of, motivational processes, and a lot of intrinsic, extrinsic, studies which were done on intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, then were based on modeled upon this self-determination theory. Okay, needs based on self-determination theory and how this processes work. Okay, so explanatory theories then can be used as basis for formulating research or asking new research questions based on this type of explanatory theory. Conceptual theories do not become, unless if you are asking research questions to factor structures, or if you're asking questions like developing a tool, a psychometric tool on a concept, on a construct, then conceptual theories come to your rescue. Okay, because they give you dimension, they give you idea, theoretical basis based on which you can develop item pool and so on and so forth. That's when you use conceptual theories or structure related theories. Okay, explanatory theories is what is. Now, many a times as researchers, you may not get already established theory. Okay, so based on a reading of literature or body of work done in that area, you should come up with your own reasoning or own, type of explanatory hypothesis or predictive hypothesis or whatever the nature of research you are engaging in. Okay, or a theorization across that. Okay, which leads you to your research problem. And that can not be done only with your thinking. Okay, for that you need to also read other researchers' work and draw from their arguments to support this finding. Now, what I'm saying to you may all sound Greek sometimes. Okay, it may sound very abstract. Now, these are things which are by nature abstract. Okay, you'll understand these things better. Okay, one exercise I tell students to understand what I'm talking is, go back when you read the introduction of the journal. Okay, try to understand the nature in which people explain their theorization. Okay, normally the first two paragraphs on the journal is basically defining concepts, okay, or introducing concepts which are touched upon in the research. Okay, the third, fourth paragraph and onwards, okay, then go on determining the conceptual basis of explaining, the explanatory basis on explaining how the researcher has conceptualized the research, explained the reasoning behind the research. That is what we call as a type of a logical or process of theorization. Okay? Once you understand that, you also understand that, okay, now I need to start thinking in these ways. Okay, and then find a probably explanatory based on certain readings, develop a type of observation, or develop a certain type of understand a certain gap in research, ask a new research question. Okay, develop what type of explanation behind it. Okay, based on which I develop a hypothesis. Okay, and then I want to test the hypothesis to say that whether my explanation or my prediction or whatever assertion I'm making or whatever question answer I'm predicting to my research question holds true. Okay, so whether my data supports it, right? So that's the type of approach you take. Okay, you do not start with, okay, what variables seem interesting. I feel like studying, okay, locus of control is something what I want to study, self-esteem I want to study. Does it make sense together? That is like face, how, the concept of face validity, right? It sounds okay, right? But is it a new research question? Is it an interesting research question? Okay, and that's why, over time, okay, look, as starting initial years, you all are young researchers, you all do it, it's fine. But if you take it as a comfort zone and you do it over years, okay, when you are doing your higher studies, then no one will take a research seriously, right? So starting when you are just getting the know-how of research, which you are at the stage you are in, it's fine to do that, okay, but it's not the right approach. Okay, you need to start thinking, reasoning out with the body of work done, and try to ask research questions, formulate a type of working theory, okay, which you want to, or a new, new research question which you want to test, which you want to understand better, okay, or you want to, if you are doing type of a qualitative research, you want to come up with a deeper understanding or a working theory related to a phenomena which you have observed, or a type of meaning making process of human experience, okay, which you are trying to engage with. Okay, so depending on that, you will think about how you would want to approach your research. Many students write very vague research topics. Okay, sometimes they look at titles of books, so like for example, they may say something like death anxiety and its effects. Okay, that's like a name of the book. Okay, it's not clear what method you see, the title has to always, it's like a type of a one line glimpse or essence of what your research question or what your research problem you're attending to. Okay, it's somewhere, like when people write, relationship association in the word, it says also that, you are trying to use a type of a correlational approach. When you're using the word effect, it tries to say you are using a prediction or a cause effect type of an approach, okay, in your research. Okay, so it gives you a glimpse of probably the methodological approach you are engaging with. Okay, sometimes it gives a glimpse of the factors you are considering in your study, okay, or the type of research question. Somewhere the research title should communicate that. It cannot be vague, it cannot be broad, as if you're writing a book chapter or you're writing a book. Okay, right? Because your research work is very specific. Okay, and somewhere it should exemplify, give an essence of that. Many a time research work does not justify research objectives. I've seen a lot of enthusiastic researchers writing 7-8 research objectives, and they have, like correlation done between 2 or 3 variables. And I'm like, you are doing a correlation between 2 and 3 variables, fine, okay, no problem with that. How are you addressing to this correlation the 8 objectives? It's not clear. Okay, and if you see the objectives, either they are too far-fetched, they'll say things like, based on the research, the objective of this research is to formulate policies, okay, develop better practices in psychology. By correlating 2-3 variables and develop some understanding about the relationship, how are you going to develop, have practical implications, okay, or have policy implications? Too far-fetched, right? If you are doing a body of work over time, and then you can derive, work, something from that, and contribute some way, that is fine. Okay, one research does not do that. Okay, so do not avoid such, over glorified or over emphasized type of objectives or unrealistic objectives. Okay, objectives is basically what are you going to address, what you are planning. It's an objective, right? What are you planning to address or achieve through your study? Okay, that's it. Okay, if you have even one objective or 2 objectives, fine. Okay, do not try to, and sometimes people reword the same objective differently and they present it as a separate objective. Avoid this. Okay, be simple, be specific. That's the approach to take. Sometimes we are biased toward, and this happens with very experienced researchers also, are biased towards a quantitative or qualitative research based on their confidence to use that approach. Even within quantitative approaches, some people are used with a, are confident with a certain statistical technique, then they'll end up, taking every research topic and trying to fit in that type of design or with that comfortable with, or, approach with they're comfortable with. Okay. Now what happens is, sometimes you find a lot of established researchers might be working with a certain method, okay, because they have chosen a very specific research area, and they are researching only in that research area, and that method or that approach they find is the best way to address that area. Okay, then it is fine. Okay. But if you are a new researcher and you are, holding on or anchoring upon something you are confident upon, then you are not allowing the research problem to decide what method would be best suited to address the research problem, okay, or answer the research question, right? Now, this is qualitative, quantitative is a broad framework. I'm talking about even methods within these broader frameworks, okay? So you need to understand that your research problem, your theorization, your basically your research question should guide what approach, methodological approach would best be suited to, get data points or to get the information required to answer this research type of question or address this type of research problem. Okay, so that needs to decide, not your comfort zone. Okay, and for that, if you are using a new research method, then you always have resources. You have to go, engage, read, understand, okay, speak to other researchers who are probably best thing is sometimes you can write to already researchers working in an area. If you have certain issues, write to them, they reply to you in emails also. Okay, they are very interested to sometimes to reply to people who are inquisitive researchers. Today there are a lot of online platforms, but in online platform the problem is you do not know who is the other person. All this, Quora, or you have this, all this, I forgot what you call it. Okay, you have all this online platform where people respond to research related questions, but sometimes you do not know what is the who is the person and who is answering and how sound is their response, right? So that becomes a limitation of this online platform. But today you have a lot of resources to go back, read, understand. So do not hold to a type of a comfort zone. Many a times research question or problem and the conclusion do not match. I've seen a lot of students and sometimes even very established researchers writing big chunks of paragraphs in their conclusion and discussing or concluding about other research work done in that area. Your conclusion is a statement or some statements, okay, meant to explain the findings of your research or to conclude or to to pass a type of concluding statement or to say something about the how it address the hypothesis of the research problem about your research, and that's it. Okay, and probably put certain elements of the limitations you observed and probably what can be done and how other researchers can address it and so on and so forth. Okay, even if you read good research ka conclusion padho na, they are very precise, okay, to the point. They will point out one, two limitations, shortcomings, okay, things which can be done, how other researchers could address it, okay, what were their findings, summarize their findings, this, okay, say something about the hypothesis, the problem they have addressed, and that's it. Okay, they would not write about other researchers, research finding, and how that says about that is other people's research finding. That has nothing to do with your conclusion. You can use other supportive studies and all for your discussion part. Okay, when you're writing a result and discussion, that is fine. Okay. Certain problems in analysis which are there also, and I would not like to dwell much in that because many of you are young researchers and statistics and things, many things about that you are still in the process of learning. But some problems in analysis are that sometimes not it's always better to go and read about a statistical technique. Okay, many times there's a tendency about what you try to apply. Like I've seen simple mistakes like the research is correlational in nature and people are using a t-test, okay, and they also report findings using that. You do not know how they have actually done it. The data is not meant to use a t-test. Okay, the nature of the design, the way you approach your research does not, that type of data analytical method tool or inferential statistics does not fit in that type of an idea. Okay, so this type of basic problems also I would, as a young researchers, try and go and make an attempt to read. There are some very good books which are very simple. Like there is this very good book which had helped me in my PhD days also, called Discovering Statistics. All PhD scholars refer to that book. Not that it's a great book, okay, it covers up a lot of interesting topics and somewhere it gives very simple explanations and very clear, easy to understand explanations in that book. Okay, so Discovering Statistics by Andy Field. Okay, there are some good books which simplify things. Go and try to read those books. Okay, try to understand, try to see whether what you are trying to study, the type of research method you have used, okay, the type of design you have, okay, and your data analytical method, okay, makes sense. Okay, try to go read about it. There are also issues like, when we use a type of parametric test, okay, like t-test, ANOVA, many type of correlations, okay, they are based on certain assumptions. Okay, if you read statistics books, okay, before they introduce the topic, okay, you will have certain assumptions given. For example, like, that the data follows a normal distribution, okay, and secondly, like, something like homozygosity for correlation. And it's the same thing as if you understand it in terms of a t-test, and it's called homogeneity of variance. Okay, and there are some tests also which are meant to test whether your data what you have collected follows a normal distribution. Like there is tests like Shapiro-Wills or Kolmogorov-Smirnov. Then you have for homogeneity of variance, you have certain tests like what is it? I'm forgetting. Levin's test for t-test type of statistics, or for ANOVA type of statistics, we have this Bartlett's test. Okay, there are a lot of books which has one good book which I have come across is a book written by my colleague Dr. Vivek Belekar. His book, in fact, is one of the few books I've come across when they have written, where he has written, when he has mentioned about the the assumptions to be tested before using a statistics. He has also mentioned the types of statistical techniques or tools you can use to test these assumptions, okay, and how to interpret it. Okay, so that's one good thing I found about his book. Okay, so it's available, it's published by Sage, and it's available online. You can always purchase it. Okay, and there are other books also, but very few books actually give you, when they mention the assumption, they tell you about the test, used to, the type of data analytical method used to test these assumptions. But this is by and far a good approach to do. Okay, so you use, if they do not fit the assumptions, or or you have small data sets, very small data sets, then it's always better to go and use a non-parametric equivalent to the type of design you are using. Okay, use a non-parametric test. Okay, there are a lot of books also which explain these non-parametric tests which you can use. Yeah. So these are certain things you can take care of as a growing researcher. Definitely data analysis, statistics, the sky is the limit. A lot of work being done, and a lot of advanced techniques like structural equation modeling and multi-level modeling, which are very far-fetched things for now. Slowly by slowly, if you are engaged in the process, you learn these things over time, to your higher education also. But for now, at least get this thing right. Okay, get your reasoning across this thing right, so that you grow as a researcher. About research reporting, okay, one thing, okay, I think I have gone over time, so I would like to conclude. Okay, one very easy thing to do is definitely read research papers, try to understand how people write. Okay, what is scientific writing? Okay, best thing is to do, read research papers, try to identify the style in writing. Your publication manual by APA is such a good resource guideline. Okay, many people take APA as only a reference to know how to do citation and references. If you look at the entire APA manual, okay, which is the 7th edition, the latest one, okay, it gives you detailed information about different components of the writing process or the reporting process, including how tables should be reported, okay, how the title head should be formatted, how citations, references, what language, how language should be used while writing. Okay, the grammar, okay, what should be written in past tense, what should be written in present tense, how to use, the 7th edition in fact has introduced how to use non-biased language while writing, because sometimes you are dealing with a lot of culturally diverse issues, like for example gender, disabilities, race, okay, caste, whatever it is. Okay, so different of these issues. Okay, so how to use non-biased language in your writing. Okay, there are very nice, or in the structure and content. Okay, so what should a research publication involve? Okay, what are the components of a research publication? What should be written in the introduction? What should be written in the literature review? Okay, how should be results should be reported? Okay, the APA publication manual is a very good standard guideline. Unless you go to the entire book, take some time, understand it. Okay, you would not understand writing good research papers. Okay, and over time the APA manual has evolved. Okay, and it's getting better by the day. Okay, and it's a very, very good resource to at least get the know-how of how to present a good research report or a good research manuscript meant for publication. Okay, so which you'll send for publication. So that's a very good practice to engage in. Now, apart from that, there are other style guides, like if you are suppose publishing in a type of a interdisciplinary journal, okay, then sometimes they do not use AP publication style. They may use something called as MLA publication style, okay, that is Modern Language Association ka publication guideline, which a lot of language related or humanities or social sciences use. Okay, then you have the Chicago Manual of Style, okay, which is by the University of Chicago. Okay, so again by their language association. So there are interdisciplinary research journals, okay, which you may publish in, which may use the style guide. So these also become helpful. Suppose if they tell you that we follow this style guide, then you have to always go and read through them and understand how to write, how to report, and how to cite references, cite studies, and how to report references, and so on and so forth. Plagiarism is something what you need to take into context. Plagiarism is a very deep topic and probably require a lot of time to speak about, but try not to direct copy pasting. It's theft, okay, it's intellectual theft. Okay, there are different techniques of paraphrasing, okay, understanding the context, writing, even if you're reporting other people's researchers' work, you infer and you write it in the context of what you are arguing. You just do not take it and just reword it. Okay, that's not paraphrasing. Okay, you infer what you need from what they are saying. Okay, but definitely as accurately as possible. You do not misrepresent the researchers. You infer, you write it in the context as a supportive or explanatory argument you want to make in your research writing. Okay, so that's why they are always contextualized. You can't just take chunks of researches and just we'll see a lot of researchers putting paragraphs and paragraphs. Okay, study one say this, study two say this, study three say. Okay, it's very descriptive writing. There's nothing. Where's the researcher? The researcher is missing that writing. Okay, so avoid this type of writing styles. Yeah, so these are the few things I would have said in the process of when it takes to these are certain things I learned over time and I felt were helpful for me. So I felt as young researchers to share this thing with you from the perspective of the approach of doing research. Okay, this was my view of it. Okay, so different researchers would add more things and tell you more things, and over time you'll interact with different researchers as you grow and you learn through the process. Okay, so I humbly conclude what my deliberation was on this topic, and thank you very much for inviting me and giving me this time to speak about this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilbur. This indeed was a lot of labor, as we were seeing, coupled with a lot of passion for research that you've had. And also, like I've said in the introduction of you, that you've always been that person who's helped us, helped me as a student wade through murky waters. And that's exactly what you're doing with this group of researchers who are listening to you patiently for more than 1.5 hours now, where you've actually tried to show them how to steer their way, how to navigate the way through this large pool of research that there is. Thanks a lot for this. Does anyone have any questions that they'd want to ask Dr. Wilbur?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask.
Yes, Chaitali, please.
I just wanted to ask if you could repeat the 2 books you recommended for statistics.
One is for ease of understanding. I'm not saying that's the best book in statistics, but it's an easier book to understand. One is Discovering Statistics by Andy Field. Okay, now there are 2 books. Okay, because he also speaks about how to use the statistical software. Okay, so there is one book which says Discovering Statistics using IBM SPSS. Okay, because now IBM has owned SPSS, so now it's called IBM SPSS. His earlier book used to say Discovering Statistics using SPSS. Okay, but the later versions you say Discovering Statistics using IBM SPSS. But basically, it's using the statistical packages for social sciences software. Okay, that is SPSS, which is known to be. Okay, so that's one book. Okay, and there's also another book which has written, which is called Discovering Statistics using R. Okay, so that is basically using a different platform, okay, to analyze your data. Okay, R, as you know, is a free, and a very good analytical platform. Okay, we can't call it a software; it's more a platform, because many people write programs for it. Contribute to programs. Okay, different. This to that. Okay, so it's a free this thing, so you can download it. It takes time to learn it. Okay, but once you get in the hang of it, I'm still learning it. Okay, as I learn a lot from my colleagues who use it widely, and sometimes I use it in some of my research also. So this book also is a helpful book. And secondly, my colleague has written a book called Statistics for Psychology using R. Okay, Dr. Vivek Bilekar. It's published by Sage Text. That book I especially recommend. It's definitely a good book overall, but especially I recommend when you are looking at certain tests which are required to test assumptions, because there are many books I felt have not covered that part. And many a time when I remember doing my PhD, I could see the assumptions, but I not know what are the tests to actually test this. And he had done a good job in addressing for different statistics, what are the assumptions and what are the tests you can use to actually test these assumptions. Okay, and he has also compared which is a better method than the other. So that's a good book for that. Okay, so I feel, and then there are other definitely very good books in statistics, by Wilcox, and I'm forgetting the name of the books. Howell is a good book. Okay, so these are name of authors, but I don't remember the exact name of books. Okay, but yeah, if you just type statistics and the name of the authors, you'll definitely get the books they have written.
Dr. Bilekar's book actually also does one more thing, which is that he tells you how to think about variables in a statistical way, and gives a lot of psychology examples, uses a lot of psychology researchers as examples to be able to understand how to apply a particular test, statistical test to a psychological problem. So I think that a lot of other books just talk about statistical theory. It becomes very difficult for us to grapple with.
And many books, as you rightly said, that was actually one of my problem. Even I had discussed with him long back. We had discussed that, that many of the books, even in research methodology, explain, certain methods, designs, or, statistical approaches by using non-psychology examples. Like you might be remembering those examples where you said that, if there are 3 groups and one group is given one drug. Okay, now that is a very non-psychology example. Okay, it may explain the concept, but as psychology students, we want to relate with more psychology related examples, right? So that book
even
also,
the probability examples that we've all learned in probability books, they are just so non-psychology.
Yes.
What to make out of them.
Yeah, the classical flipping the coin thing. Okay, so yes, right.
Any other questions? Feel free to type your questions in the chat box in case you do not want to unmute yourself or switch on your camera, as we've newly learned today. It's okay if you chat with us, type your questions in the chat box.
Sir, I also ask that like sometimes when we're reading research paper like on the internet, like I've not read many, but like when try to do it, it's like the language seems so complicated, and it's like half of the things we just don't understand, so it's really difficult to understand. So how can we is there easy way to go about it?
Okay, I'll tell you 2 approaches to that. Okay, there is no easy way. Okay, so something what is complex, something what is difficult is difficult. And because they use a lot of scientific language, they use a very concise way, precise way, to the point, putting forth of arguments or interpreting things, they are not very descriptive. When you read books, they are more descriptive, so they become conceptually easier to get. Research papers, focus on paucity of space. Okay, you have to always justify. In good research journals, even if you're writing 10 pages, you have to justify why you're writing 10 pages. Okay, and why that article could not be written in 5 pages. And hence, researchers use very scientific words, terms to probably explain things what they can write in 5 lines in just 1 line. Okay, so, now what the best thing you can do as a learning researcher, one thing is to again cross-reference differently. Okay, suppose there's a certain concept of term you're not understanding, go back to books, try to read it. You can go and Google it also sometimes. Okay, that's also a simpler way of doing it. Okay, just Google what the term means. So read about the concepts, terms, scientific terms used, so that, and then go and read that paragraph back again. Okay, so starting now, for by the time you read certain articles, in a given area, it will take some effort. It will be laborious in process. Okay, but then over time you will understand that now you know this concept is this, so you'll able to reason out with whatever is written better. Second time, second thing, even now till date, okay, I'll tell you, and I'm sure even 5 years from now, there are some articles for me also to understand. Even my senior colleagues tell me you have to read them 5 times to get a hang of what they are trying to say. Okay, it's a laborious process. Okay, because sometimes they're so complex. The arguments are so complex. You need to read them 4 times, 5 times, sometimes 6 times to actually understand what they're saying. So that would be a laborious process. You get better in time. As I said, it's a journey of growth. Okay, there is no easy way out. I do not know. Probably if we have other researchers also, and Meet also, I know is a good. If he wants to share some way out, I do not know, but I feel this is the best way out to to deal with this thing. Yeah. But
Yes.
the point is that if you read from good journals, you are reading good work, so you over time get accustomed to it, and your ability to conceptualize, understand, infer become better. If you read journals which are poor and very descriptive writing style of writing, then you are not increasing your capacity or your ability to relate to good scientific work. Okay, and that's why I always emphasize read good journals, articles from good journals. Yeah.
And thank you, Dr. Wilbur, for this answer. But I also wanted to add, because you said this, that that I have personally started to feel that good reading and good writing are really interconnected processes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like you cannot understand a lot of what is being written in journals till you also start writing, and for writing you start reading better.
Yeah.
I feel like these are two interconnected processes which we as psychologists are not really taught as cautiously and carefully as they need to be taught. I feel like reading and writing are courses in themselves. Academic reading and academic writing are courses in themselves, which really require a lot of continuous, constant rigor that needs to be put in. And I feel like it's great that you feel that there is something out there in the world that I'm not able to understand, that is becoming difficult for me, which then probably calls for me to read and reread and reread, talk to people, ask them, reorient myself. And I feel like this is the beginning of a process that probably today you feel that it is really difficult. If you keep at it, if you keep doing it alongside writing, reading, writing parallelly, I feel like in a year or two, in probably 3 years, 4 years, you will be able to read with much more complexity and understand a lot more between the lines that is probably not very out there directly, and also that will show in the way you conceptualize ideas, structure paragraphs yourselves, write essays, write chapters when you are doing the writing.
Yeah. So that's the very point I had said, Meet. Also, you are very right. When I was giving my talk, that when you learn to write, also, the exercise is to go and read and understand how people write. Also, okay. So that definitely happens to your natural reading. But what happens is when sometimes young researchers, because they are studying, giving exam, they do not have the time, okay, to probably go to this entire process. So then I tell them, at least take one article out, read for the exercise of understanding how people write. Okay, forget about conceptually understanding paper is one thing, okay, but also examine it and understanding the nature of stylistic aspect of writing, okay, or the way they frame arguments, the way they use supportive studies, the way they draw from other researchers and connect it to the idea. Okay, so this becomes a helpful process, as you said, also rightly said. Yeah, any other questions?
Sir, I have one question.
Yeah, Yogita, right? Who is this? Tanvi, yeah.
Yes, sir. So you mentioned that when we are starting the research with understanding like which variables we have to select. So why is that a wrong approach? Because without having the basic understanding of a hypothesis or variables, how can we move further?
The question asked is, no, variables, I'm not saying are not important in research. It comes in later in research. You can't start with that. Okay, because the idea is, on what basis did you choose these variables? Because just they look interconnected. Okay, and what are you saying? Okay, what are you saying about their relationships? Okay.
Okay, sir.
That needs to be answered. For that needs to be answered, you need to theorize or relate it to some existing body of work, right? Which it's not that you have come out with something very novel and no one has researched it. Many people say, that no one has done research in this area. I say, they may not use the same concept, same terms. There are always related work which is there, which you need to infer from and relate to, and then theorize. So theorizing comes first, okay, which then explains your use of variables. Okay, variables are meant to say that to address my problem of my study, to test my hypothesis, this is what I need to look into or measure, and then with variable comes the idea of measurement. That is, if you're following, when you're following a very quantitative type of an approach to your study, but it cannot start from there. So you are saying that two variables, because I'll tell you another problem related to it. What happened many a times, that you take two variables and you say that by the outlook of it, they seem to be related and make some common sense or some logic to say it's related. When you're writing the discussion part of your you do not have depth in explaining, okay, why the results have come the way it has come, okay, or why because you have not read the work and conceptualized deeply, or with a lot of logical reasoning, okay, to explain why, okay, what are the processes, what are the factors which are influencing these factors to relate, okay, or some other factor mediating the relationship between these two factors, okay. You have not engaged in that process, so you do not know how to explain the findings you get, right? So then you come with all possible, I've seen people writing stuff like, they are giving 3 differential type of explanations. So it's like telling the reader saying, aapko jo pasand aaya, aap isme se le lo, and or they give very commonsensical arguments for that, because of this might be this happened, or because of this reason this might have. Okay, aisa nahi hota. You need to start with theorizing, and once you start theorizing, then it gives you the basis of explaining your results also. Right? Otherwise, it's a very type of superficial process.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Yogita, you had raised your hand. Do you still want to ask the question?
Yes. Yeah. Good afternoon. So I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
The first question is, so when you're formulating a research proposal formally and you're submitting a research proposal, how detailed does this research design have to be, and does it have to include the statistics that we use to analyze the data?
So see, some analytical framework can be mentioned, okay, but as I said, the use of statistics is dependent on many factors which are also related to the distribution of your data, the way your data is acting, okay, in the sense the nature of your data, what you have collected, okay. So you can not always determine, okay, but you can always say that normally a line is used, proposed statistical analysis, okay, where you say that these type of statistical frameworks or methods can be used, okay, to test the results, okay. So this shows somewhere a type of a clarity in thinking, because when you're writing a proposal, because proposals are normally meant for certain scholarships, to get certain funding, or to get selected for something, okay. So one of the evaluation criteria is always to see how much clarity you have in the entire methodological process, okay. When you are writing about design, okay, now when you say how much elaborately you have to write about it, describing the design is not a problem, because sometimes the design in itself, even mentioning the design, says what the design is, okay. And normally people of readers of research proposal, evaluators of research proposal are people who are somewhat established and know this thing, okay. So you need not probably write very descriptive about the nature of the design, yes, but you need to explain why the use of this design, okay. So the rationale or the reasoning behind use of a particular design, okay, to be suitable for the nature of the study you're doing, that can be emphasized upon, okay. So that speaks about your reasoning or your choice of using certain design or certain approach to studying your research, or other, even when it comes to other methodological factors. Design is one part of the methodological things you use, but even, for example, the nature of tools you use, why probably there are 2-3 tools which can be used to measure the same variable, okay, why you choose one measure over another, okay. So you can also emphasize on something like that, and or how you choose to adapt a tool to the culture, okay, because it's not so culture fair, or it's certain modification items are required. Okay, so this could be also explained. Okay, so depend on which part of the method also you are addressing.
So based on what you just said, you said that we can say that the proposed, we could propose inferential statistics based on the data that we receive, right? So
not data, you have not collected data, no, if you are giving a proposal.
Yeah.
Based on the type of design you are using, the type of formulation you have, the nature of the hypothesis you intend to test, okay, you can, give a proposed statistical analysis.
Okay. And my second question was about a confounding variable, which would be related to self-reporting. So when you're talking about sensitive topics and you want to get primary data, you make a questionnaire. And if you include questions which people feel uncomfortable answering, that becomes a limitation because your data is not so accurate, right? So how do you overcome this confounding, and how big of a confounding is it? Like, do we still go ahead with
First of all, it is not a confounding, it is a limitation. Okay, now there are certain inherent limitations of certain methods in psychology. Okay, like for example, self-report measures have a lot of inherent, this. Okay, people who develop tools, okay, especially suppose if you are talking about attitude towards thing like attitude towards persons with disabilities, for example. Okay, now it's because people would always have a type of want to portray them a social desirability type of this. Okay, because they always want to show that they are not, they do not have a negative attitude towards persons with disabilities. They may have a type of positive portrayal. Now people who develop these tools, okay, normally take care in the way the word the items, or they may use certain filler items, okay, to check on this, okay, to distort the nature of the purpose of the scale, okay, or they may use certain reverse code items, okay. So they may, what they do is normally they use items which mean the same, okay, but they word it, they may put a replication of the same item worded in three different ways to see whether there is a consistency in responding, right? So there are different checks and balances, which different methodological checks and balances, which researchers who are established know, who are working in a given area and developing certain psychometric measures, okay, would try to inherently incorporate while designing the tool, right? So this is what is done. But as you said, that to a level can be taken care of, okay. But there are these implicit biases which would prop up, or this this divergence which would occur in self-report measures, and these are inherent limitations of self-report measures. To a level you can so-called control it or deal with it, or address it.
Okay, sir, thank you so much.
Okay, I think that was the last question that we had, and we can now move on to a little bit of a formality without which this program would be incomplete, which is the formal vote of thanks. I'd like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of the Department of Psychology at SPND Women's College. Right at the outset, I'd like to thank our trust, SPRJ Kanyashala Trust, which has always been very encouraging of the Department of Psychology, its various activities, its needs, its requirements, followed by the principal of our college, Dr. Asha Menon, who has again been somebody we look forward to for her guidance, for her mentorship, and the department has always received a very encouraging support from her in terms of everything that we wanted to do for our students, all the competitions that we've organized, Trishul, which is almost an annual feature, a part of which this talk is today. And therefore, the next stakeholder that I want to thank is all the 11 participating teams, without which this competition would not have been what it is today. So all the teams that participated, all the enthusiasm that you showed, the constant communication that you've had with us, the curiosity that you've had, which has kindled this spirit of research, and kept the fervor of the competition going. Thank you so much to all the participants, all the participating teams. And of course, without a say, thank you so much, Dr. Wilbur, for sparing the time, not only for looking at all the research papers, giving us minute detailed feedback on all the research papers, but also this laborious and painstaking talk that you've given, which has been so meticulous, which has taken us through all the aspects of the process of research, not only those things which we can get to read about in the textbooks, but also those reading between the line kind of insights that you have had thanks to your experience in this domain for more than a decade, right from the time you were a teaching assistant to what you are today at the department. Thank you so much for weaving in those insightful aspects into your talk, which I'm sure will be very, very helpful for all these budding researchers in whatever projects they take. Thereafter, I would want to thank John Bhai and Bhavesh Bhai, who have been a part of the technical support of today's program. And of course, Gurav Bhai, who is a part of our lab, without whom this setup here, Dr. Wilbur, we are actually sitting in a small auditorium where the students have, so that multiple join in. We are a part of, we are sitting here. So Gurav Bhai has been a part of helping us organize this. And lastly, all the students who've been a part of this program, who've joined in on Zoom, who've joined in physical capacity from the lab, from the dome. This program would have been impossible without your patience, without your engagement. So thanks a lot to all of you. Once again, we'd like to
thanks to Hashmat also, who's been arranging the technical support for us for YouTube Live as well. So thanks to Hashmat for
Hashmat is a part of the family.
Family, absolutely.
Actually take her for granted, but I should thank you, Hashmat. Thanks for being there with us through this journey. And we look forward to seeing all of you again in the next research convention that we propose that we'll soon be coming up with. And Dr. Wilbur, we look forward to your support as always.